Cool. All right then. So thanks everybody for being here. Thank you, Russell, for giving us time to come along here. This is a part of the Thrive Health, Wellbeing and Empowerment Month Festival. It's been organised by Practice Probiotics, the Wendy Centre Collective, Citizen and Doggy People's Diary. So my dear friend Russell has joined us today, who has very recently been a part of a very interesting, slightly bizarre and unexpected media sensation like storm. Rather than me trying to sort of like succinctly summarise the story, may I just ask you to start at the beginning, wherever you deem the beginning to be?
Yeah. So I think I'm framing it as a spotlight, just to try and keep it in the positive. So my wife Wendy died in April the 21st, and 2 days into her being at our house, her dead body being in our bedroom, I decided to write a Facebook post. I've been posting, I've got 2 Facebook profiles. We've been travelling for 3 years, and I've got a large Facebook profile, which is me and the wider community. A lot of that community is based on my former career as a DJ and a promoter and a bar owner. And when we started travelling, because the journey was about making the most of Wendy's life, which we've been told was limited, I kind of wanted it to be not just the wider community I was communicating with, so I started a separate Facebook profile for close friends and family. So when it came to Wendy dying, I felt I needed to make an announcement to the wider community, to people who hadn't been following us on our journey, didn't know Wendy had cancer, may not know Wendy died. So basically, I started to write a Facebook post which became very heartfelt and very long and explained the whole story really from the start, 10 years ago when Wendy, well 11 years ago now, when Wendy got diagnosed. And I think actually in the end it was a well-written piece, and it was long. And I got an incredible reaction from it. I got hundreds of text message emails and Facebook messages, and the post seemed to go viral. And I'm not a blogger or a Facebook poster or a social media person at all, but I was quite touched by the reaction from this post. And basically what happened after that was that the media picked up on it, only the local press, the Derby Evening Telegraph, and a reporter phoned me a few days later and said, look, we've come across your post and we really like it and we want to publish it. Would that be okay with you? Which to most people might be quite a normal question, but to me it was not a normal question at all, which I'll try and explain. So in the journey that myself and Wendy had with her cancer, part of it was to disengage with mainstream media because of the negative effects that we felt it has on human psyche. We haven't watched TV for 6 years, we haven't picked a newspaper up, we don't even watch films. And although Wendy's story during that period at times became remarkable because she got rid of her tumour at one point through avoiding conventional therapy and going down the natural health route, she became a sensation, but we made a decision that we weren't going to go to the mainstream media to publicise it. We wanted the story to emanate through our community organically. It's where our values and our beliefs were. So when I was asked about, you know, do you want to publish it? I was like, oh, that's the mainstream media. And I don't want anything to do with it, disengaged from it. But I took some time and considered it, and the guy seemed nice, and I thought, this is a nice story, you know, and it reaches out to people, and maybe if we do let it get published in a local paper, some other people might find that nice and healing and encouraging and empowering and authentic. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to let go of this, you know, avoid mainstream media. And genuinely, I thought it was just going to get published in the Telegraph. I didn't have any idea that it was going to go any further than that. We weren't courting attention. You know, we'd got plenty as it was in an organic, lovely community way. I'd already had the hundreds of messages from the people that reached out to it. It had done what I wanted it to do, the message. So I said yes, and the reporter was lovely, and he preceded essentially my Facebook post and turned it into what looked like a letter. He rang me up and he read that to me, and he'd done a really good job. I mean, I have these views of mainstream media that they distort everything. I doubt the truth in a lot of what they do, but he'd done a lovely job. And he even asked me, bless him, if the headline that he'd chosen was acceptable to me, which was along the lines of husband sleeps with dead wife. And I said, yeah, that's fine, it's the truth. It's what happened. I slept in the same room as my dead wife. So I let him roll with it, and that was that. I didn't really think much else of it, if I'm honest. So that was the Saturday we spoke. The Monday morning, they'd put it up on their online content, because that's how it rolls with the Derby Telegraph, and then it was to be published at lunchtime in their paper. And 8 o'clock in the morning, it just went absolutely crazy in my house. I had people knocking at my door wanting my photograph, and journalists ringing and news agencies. And what happens, so I understand, is that national news agencies and so forth, they trawl local news, and when they see something interesting, they pick up on it and they all, go for it. And sometimes that becomes what they call a frenzy, and I think in this instance that is exactly what it became. It was a little odd because I was, that particular morning, so overwhelmed with grief I had to go back to bed, which hadn't happened. It was a week later. I'd been very heavily grieving, but I hadn't had to go back to bed, and so I was in bed when all these calls started to come, and I couldn't handle it emotionally. But I could see it for what it was, and that was something remarkable and really constructive, and I wanted to follow it through. So I just asked people for a rain check. I was never going to have my photograph taken by a wide-angle lens from a photographer to appear in a tabloid. That was never going to happen, so I had to gracefully refuse that sort of attention and point people to my Facebook if they wanted photographs, which were natural ones. Anyway, I recruited the help of, because in my former life I used to court the press, I used to court media, national media, international media. I employed someone, paid them a lot of money to try and get me in the media, because we had a nightclub to promote and a record label and goodness knows what else. So the woman that used to do that for me, she's now a school teacher, I rang her and I said, can you help me, Anna? And she was like, yeah. So she took care of all that. She turned it into a press release. She handled that for me. And at first I was like, right, okay, look, I'm not talking to any tabloid press, I'm not talking to any Murdoch press, I'm only going to do interviews with The Independent and The Guardian, because I'm a lefty, and I'm a radical, and I don't want to speak to the Tory press. So when the Mail called, I didn't speak to them, and I only did exclusive interviews with The Guardian and The Independent. And then as the sort of days went by, that softened a lot, and I realised that the story was bigger than my personal politics and my issue with the Daily Mail or whoever else. And I decided to open up to that. So in the first day, this story, it just went exponential. It became the biggest click story in the Sun newspaper. My children and their partners were around the house, they were watching it, and they were saying, it's in the New York Post. It's becoming the biggest story in the New York Post. It is the biggest story in the New York Post. 93,000 hits or something. And we just couldn't believe it, because we knew it was a lovely little story, as it still is, but we just couldn't really understand why it seemed the whole world's media were all over it, and they loved it. But we thought, that's today, it'll all be gone tomorrow. The next day it got bigger and bigger, and it's still alive now. And I have a theory about what that is, but whatever, it seems to have certainly captivated people, or captured people's attention. And from the start until right now, sitting here, the whole thing's been a real blessing. There's been no negative to it at all. There hasn't been one journalist that's distorted anything. And they could have done, I don't care. There hasn't been one troll, well there have, there's been plenty of trolls on message boards, but not one that's bothered me, bothered my son for a while. I had time to wind his neck in. Because, there are always going to be some people that have different views. But for me personally, and the family, the whole attention has been incredible and healing. And for me, with my spiritual beliefs, I genuinely believe that Wendy's been pulling all the strings for it. So, I don't know if you want me to tell the story of Wendy, but that's the story of the media spotlight.
Definitely want us to hear the story of Wendy. I feel that at this stage, I'd quite like to kind of at least touch upon, and then maybe come back to, in the wake of that attention, and in the wake of that kind of, viral interest with the story, had that in any way kind of changed your ideas about what the future might bring for you? So Wendy passed away suddenly. You were going through a process of grief. Out of nowhere, this story, you know, you were heavily engaged with the media for a period of time, which you said has always been, you know, a very positive thing. It's been a blessing, and I don't know to what extent people know what might have come out of that. So the answer, I suppose, is almost a yes and no to that. So the media attention really was incredible. I ended up on television, the television programme I was on, which was This Morning with, I've forgotten the woman's name, but Schofield, the interview. That's had like 500,000 clicks on YouTube. I was interviewed for newspapers all over the world. The story of the press release and the news agencies went all over the world. I mean, it was in newspapers in Brazil, Australia, and Russia, and India, and Turkey, everywhere, Africa. And I ended up being invited onto the Jeremy Vine show, which went really well. The Ed Marr show on Radio 4. This was 4 million listeners, 7 million listeners, and then remarkably ended up on the BBC World Service. I was told to 280 million listeners. It was just incredible. So off the back of that, I did national radio in America and Germany, and just an Ireland, and just all over the place. And off the back of that, I was approached by a literary agent who said that she was confident to get me a publishing deal. Unfortunately, we're in a good relationship with her, and that looks like that may well happen. I was also approached by a documentary filmmaker who said that she wants to make a series with me in, sending around the world talking about death and dead bodies, and multiple other things to do with the whole story. So I was like, yeah, I'd really be up for that. I mean, it's not changed my life because it hasn't happened yet. I'm sure if and when that does, that would be quite life-changing. But those two things, I mean, the most remarkable one is the TV series, I suppose, considering I've not watched TV for 6 years. I don't like it as a medium, you know, it's not me at all. But I sort of said to this woman, the only way, I've no interest in being a TV presenter, because I think that, peace be with them all, but they're so lacking in authenticity that I couldn't bear to be portrayed like that. So I said to her, the downside with me is I'm only going to ever talk about authentic material that's empowering for people. I'm not interested in money. I've been blessed with a life where I'm okay for money, and money's not a trip for me. So, you know, that's maybe not the sort of normal thing you get with people that end up on TV. She said that was music to her ears, the nature of the programmes that she already makes, so that was pleasing. But then I sort of said, but I am available. So basically, part of our journey was for the last 3 years, myself and Wendy have been travelling to make the most of the time that she's got. So I've managed to, well, quite quickly, fast-tracked my life into being mobile. So I've been travelling for 3 years, running my business, and everything's been fine, so I can continue to do that. So if that means going around the world with a film crew, I'm set up ready to do it. As it happens, I'd made a decision before Wendy died that I wanted to carry on travelling. The reason for that is because if anyone's ever had the opportunity to do that and the blessing, you'll know that it's kind of addictive and it's very fulfilling. So I won't be in a caravan, that'll be too lonely, but I am planning to travel. And in my thoughts about that, which I didn't develop very well because I didn't want to make plans about that while Wendy was alive, it didn't seem respectful, didn't seem right. I wanted to put that on hold and just know that that was an opportunity for me. But you know, the monkey mind can't help itself telling you what you might or may not do. Part of what I felt I wanted to do was voluntary work. So I have been blessed in life, I've been very fortunate, and I want to balance this almost idyllic travelling around the world, being able to sustain that forever if necessary, with something that's altruistic, that will give me a sense of purpose and meaning. So I didn't know what that was. So this was before the spotlight. I thought I might work with the homeless. I just thought, I've always felt that, you know, my job is I'm a landlord, I let property out, and that's not my vocation in life. That provides me with a nice income and an easy lifestyle. It
doesn't fulfil what I believe I'm here to do. I don't know what I'm here to do. Maybe this is what I'm here to do. I am beginning to think that, and I think that this whole scenario has maybe played out to be that on some sort of spiritual level. I don't know. I'm humble about it, but it certainly seems there's something happening there. So I was intending to do voluntary work and travel. Now I've been gifted this opportunity of attention, and I think that I've done a quite good job so far in terms of telling the story, which I think is a phenomenal story for people to hear. The whole story, not just how we treated Wendy's dead body, but the natural health story, and how empowering that hopefully can be for others, and how it already has been for a lot of people that we've helped. So basically, I think the answer to your question is, has it changed? No, it hasn't. What I have got is the potential there's an opportunity for some very big media attention to come to this, because the documentary maker said that, after the first series about death, we want to do the natural health story. We want to do, why do people who are living natural lives in natural cultures not get cancer? Let's go and actually shine the camera on that and bring that into the country and see how that rolls. So, that as an opportunity, fantastic, but I've kind of made a decision that, one, we're launching a website that's going to be called thewendycommunity.org. That's going to have a format, and that's going to happen whether or not I write a book or get on the TV. That's happening. I'll explain that if you want in further detail. And I will do talks. So whether I'm doing talks to a packed room of 5,000 people like I am now, or whether that's just 4 or 5 people, it doesn't bother me. Scale's not an issue. What's an issue for me is engagement, authenticity, and empowerment. And that's a two-way process. And how I can learn from that, and hopefully how I can share mine and Wendy's experience, and other people can use that at least as a catalyst for change, or maybe as some sort of inspiration for change. That would be a blessing. And my perspective in Wendy's was the same as I'm sure yours is, Simon. If that's just one person, that's enough for me, and that would make me feel that this whole thing is and was worthwhile. But it's evident that it's a lot more than one person at the moment, at least. So I suppose the variable is scale. Yes, I'm going to write a book, I might self-publish it, and that's fine, or it might get published and become some sort of crazy, bestseller. I don't know, who knows. Same with the TV thing. I'll do films like this one that are just real, authentic, on Facebook Live as part of the website that we're trying to build the international community. And the scale is really just the only variable. So, no, I think it hasn't changed my life. I think I've got some really lovely opportunities that may happen. It's certainly on a personal level really helped me move with my grief, because I genuinely believe that Wendy is pulling the strings for this, and it feels that she is really supporting this whole thing, and it really is giving me a sense of meaning and purpose, which isn't some sort of sad hanging on to Wendy type thing. It's actually like, well, really, I think it's possible that Wendy may have given her life for this if this becomes something big. If this becomes the catalyst that certainly was in the media attention that we've had. And I will share this because I think this was quite a thing. When I appeared on, when I was on the radio programs that I was on, I got feedback, and the papers that I was in, I got quite a lot of feedback from producers and journalists about reactions that their listeners or their readers had had. And there was one in particular, the producer of the Ed Marsh Show, so this is a programme on Radio 4, it goes out in the evening, apparently has 4 million listeners. She emailed me afterwards saying that they'd been contacted by an unprecedented amount of people who, number one, said very nice things about me, which was lovely, but mainly said that what the story had done was change the way that they perceived death and dying of dead bodies, that they had shift and movement, and that people were attracted maybe initially into the story because that's weird, dead body, all of that. But then as they read the story, it sort of transitioned from weird to wonderful. And that just was like a real blessing, because for us personally, it really was wonderful what happened with how we were able to treat Wendy's dead body. It helped us so much, and it was just so full of love and so wonderful. And I think gracefully we've been given this opportunity to portray that to a really wide audience, and it has and does seem to really have a positive effect on people, which is just, to me, such a blessing.
Absolutely. Beautiful. So, what I'd like to do before I invite questions from the audience is to go back to the other beginning.
Yes.
Which, again, I'll let you choose. But so maybe just shortly before diagnosis. This is okay with you, Russell?
Yeah.
And like maybe just to help people get a bit of a feel for the sort of like context, like what was going on with you guys, you and Wendy, lifestyles, and maybe how some of those things changed. And then maybe if you could like share Wendy's story up until her death, feeling free to touch upon and place emphasis on some of these things that really, really matter to you both, which are a part of this vision of how we deal with healthcare, and we deal with disease, and we deal with death, and that kind of thing. So, but obviously, in your way.
Cool. Well, first of all, let me just say to you, as I've probably said to you millions of times, but say to everyone else in the room, please don't think there's any question you couldn't ask me because I might get upset. I might end up crying right now because I'm doing quite a lot at the moment, so I'm grieving for Wendy. But there's nothing anyone could ask me that could make my grief worse, and there's nothing anyone could ask me that would upset me. You know, please don't feel you have to tread on eggshells. I feel that part of the challenge that we've got in our society is to overcome those fears of thinking you're going to make it worse by asking or doing or saying something. So many years ago I trained as a counsellor, and we focused on bereavement for quite a while. And during there I learned the theory of how our society operates, and myself and Wendy, as part of our journey, really felt this, particularly Wendy. So when people are presented with somebody that's got some devastating news, like you've got cancer, or you've got some other disease, or someone's died, then the theory is that our natural network in the West, in our society, rather than stepping forward to embrace people, steps back for fear of saying the wrong thing and making it worse. And Wendy really got that off her friends, I'm afraid, the first time round. And it was an issue. It was a big issue for Wendy. And people say things like, and they're all well-meaning, no one does this with any bad intention. You know, this is genuine. We thought you'd be, inundated with people that were ringing you. We didn't want to say the wrong thing. We didn't want to upset anybody. They're just full of fear. And the way that we've approached this, Wendy, as you may recall, I call her the warrior princess because she really was without fear. She didn't have fear of dying, and I think dying is the ultimate fear that they say any fear can be netted back down to. She didn't fear that, and she didn't fear anything apart from pain. So she basically, I forgot where I was going with that little trail. Can you help me?
Yeah, sure. So if we get, the question was about the sort of context, like the immediate, just the lifestyle context, what was going on with you and Wendy.
Okay, I'll go to that.
Just before diagnosis, and you very wisely and kindly pointed out that there's no questions that we can't ask. I know that.
That's it. Yeah, I was on some ramble about that.
It's important.
Yeah.
So please take that seriously.
Yeah,
go in on Russell. He's up for it.
Yeah, I definitely am. No, I definitely am. So
but if we can have the story from Wendy's diagnosis
I will do.
until death.
Yeah, just one last point about that. But I really am up for that. So please take that as read. But so much so that I was invited onto an American radio program that apparently goes out to millions. This DJ is called Rude Jude, and he's known to be rude to his guests. It's a comedy, explicit language show that it's something to do with Eminem, like Rude Jude's mentioned in an Eminem song. I think it's Eminem's station or something to do with him anyway. So I was like, yeah, we'll go. And it went well, and he did rattle a few cages, and he did get obscene, and he did try to make derision of it, but it was fine. Because I can deal with that, it's okay. And the actual all-round, I've not published this interview yet, I've not managed to get it on an upload, but I will, because it was good. It went on for about half an hour. It was cool. And there is comedy in this. You know, myself and Wendy laughed right up until the end about stuff. You know, tears and laughter are very closely knitted, and in my opinion, their expression, you know, they're getting it out. So it's not a doom and gloom story by any means, in my opinion. Far from it. So, how on earth I'm going to be able to tell this epic story without it lasting all night and we're not rambling, I don't know, but I'll try.
May I invite you to focus on the aspects of it which you feel are the most important in terms of, this isn't a mainstream interview. So even though you'd always tell it how it is, and you take the opportunity to share what matters to you, like, this is an interview with people, and feel free to, obviously, when it came to certain decisions that you made, and the reasons why, maybe some of the things that are more challenging politically, or maybe some of the things which challenge people's mainstream understandings of what should or shouldn't be done, or anything that ultimately is more important to you than other aspects.
Okay, so I mean, first of all, I would say that I've got some very radical views, and they're not everyone's cup of tea. So I'm trying, in the way that I portray this story, to keep it accessible to people, to keep some common ground that people can identify with, if that makes sense. And try not to go too extreme and point fingers. And so just going back to the media thing, I had a very, very, I think, really poignant experience with my attitude towards not going for any Tory press. I was approached by a journalist from the Sunday Times, and because I'd made this decision that I was going to tell, I wasn't going to drop my barrier and speak to anybody, the story is just as important to Daily Mail readers as it is to Guardian readers. I went in for an interview. I went into the Lion's Den, into Murdoch's building next to the Shard, and had a 2.5 interview with this guy. Halfway through this interview, he asked me if he could have a hug, if he could hug me, because he was so moved by the story. And he was absolutely lovely. We've become friends. And, you know, my sort of political bias would have kept me away from him. And that's what happened. And I think that was a lesson for me. You know, we learn every day. So, okay, the start of this story basically is, myself and Wendy were childhood sweethearts for the starters. We fell in love when we were teenagers, and we were really in love as teenagers. It didn't work out. We split up at 18 when we went to university. I was heartbroken. It was just the way it went. We were both heartbroken by that. And we went away and lived hundreds of miles away from each other and had nothing to do with each other for a decade or more. And then, independently, we split up from our partners, and Wendy came back to see her father in Derby, came to check me out, because she kept up to date with press cuttings from my clubbing and bar days, and she came to the bar that I owned, and we got the show back on the road, and it was love at fifth sight, or however many times we'd been trying to make it. And that was about 15 years ago. And we just fell head over heels in love with each other and had this remarkable relationship. The relationship was just absolutely full of love and totally tight. Wendy made the very difficult decision to move from Worthing, which was where she was living, to live in Derby. And basically we organised a birthday party for our joint 40th birthday party. We were born in the same month, at my bar in Derby, Sassoon. We had this party. There was hundreds of people there in flat dress. We had the time of our lives. I'd had a history of partying very hard, not just in this country, but all over the world. And Wendy had partied quite hard herself. I wouldn't call us the ultimate toxic couple. We weren't. I was relatively moderate with that party lifestyle, but you know, I got myself fully immersed in the whole thing that comes with the clubbing industry for a good 10 or more years. Just after the party, which was brilliant, Wendy went back for the results from a smear test that she'd had for cervical cancer, and was told that it was a bad smear. So we were just absolutely mortified. It was devastating news. Wendy's mother had died of cervical cancer when she was 18, and it was a huge issue for her. It was a huge issue for me. We were together at that age, and we'd watched her turn into a skeleton in real pain and die very, very slowly. And we just thought history was repeating itself with Wendy. We just were absolutely devastated. Quite early on into this sort of news, we received a book from a friend of Wendy's. The book was called Cancer, Why We're All Dying to Know the Truth, by an author called Philip Day. And it opened up a whole world of information for us. I'd highly recommend anybody read that book if cancer is in their life. Not because I think it's the best book, not because I think everything in it is true, but just it was our starting point, and it shook us up, and it set us up really, really well to go and find our own information. Wendy, pretty much from the start, maybe not the first day, but within the first few days of the diagnosis, said very firmly that, number one, she was going to be paddling her own canoe, that she wasn't going to hand her life over to the doctors. She was going to welcome any advice the doctors had got and take it on board, but not follow it blindly. And number two, which was the real saving grace for Wendy, and still is for me, told me very clearly that she wasn't afraid of dying. Now, that's quite maybe unique to Wendy, but for us on our journey, it just meant the world because it took that fear away. I don't know how you can get to that position in life. I don't know how Wendy got there. I wish I could tell everybody, this is what you need to do. You know, it's not really like that, but I can tell you I haven't either, and I can maybe try to portray some of the foundations for how Wendy got there and how I got there. But with regards to paddling her own canoe, that Wendy was totally in charge from the start right through. We basically were both self-employed. Wendy was a hypnotherapist. My business is property. And we pretty much took a sabbatical to get ourselves immersed into research. And the research was, after this book, down the natural health road. So we've both got scientific backgrounds. Wendy had done a degree in genetics. She was a very, very bright spark, Wendy was. She got the best results. We went to a good school, it's Derby School. It was a former grammar school in Derby. And she was being, looked at for Oxford or Cambridge. She got the best results in the whole year with her O-levels. And she was going to be a medical doctor because of what had happened with her mum. That's what she decided to do. Anyway, that didn't happen, but she did go and do a degree in genetics. And I did chemistry, physics and maths at school. We were both very science-led. We'd got that background. So when we did our research, we were looking at it with sort of scientific perspective. And it's interesting how that changed and how I've come to a different perspective now. And I would like to share that because I think that is a fundamental to how we view the world. So basically we spent it was like a full-time job for months, and then it became a part-time job essentially for the rest of Wendy's time. Researching, reading books, going to seminars, meeting people, looking at websites, watching films, etc. And just engaging initially quite intensely and then eventually at quite a steady pace with as much information as we could. And the goal was to keep Wendy alive. That was it. There was no other sort of agenda. It was like, how can we keep Wendy alive? We weren't necessarily looking for a cure. We were just looking to extend Wendy's life. I mean, during the process, and right now as I sit here, I do genuinely believe people can cure themselves from cancer. But it's very controversial to say that because we learned, not early enough in the journey, but we learned that there is an act called the Cancer Act of 1939, which basically makes it unlawful for anybody to claim that they can cure cancer. Which you think initially is basically to keep out the snake oil merchants and to keep out the quacks, but I think it has potentially a different perspective, and it's enforced rigorously. So we hear stories of, for example, if this meeting had been cure yourself of cancer with natural health put on the front door, then trading standards get involved with that and they enforce that right now. In this country, it's ruled out. We've met people that have felt the force of the state, who have tried to advertise that there are other ways and you can get cures if you are prepared to look. That's my belief. It's a humble belief. I have to say from the start of this, really, that all I have is my belief and my opinion. I am not in any way an expert, and frankly I don't believe in the term expert. I think it's hierarchical, I think it's elitist, and I wouldn't want to ever be labelled as that. I can tell you that I've done a lot of research and I've got a lot of practical experience, and I'm super happy to share it with anybody, but it's from a humble perspective, and it's based on the belief that all I have is beliefs and they can change. You know, somebody might point something out to me right now that would change my belief. I'm of the view, and it's a firm one, and it's a foundation to everything that we've done, which is the only certain mind is a closed one. And that I hold dear. My mind is open for business all the time, and I would urge other people to emulate that if they can. It's not possible for some because we've been trained to have this very narrow field of view and tunnel vision. So we escaped that quite early, and when we started to do our research, looking at it with science eyes, we were seeing one scientist say this, another scientist say that, and it was really well referenced and really well researched, and you read it and you thought, wow, yeah, that's it, that's the goods there, and then read something that was the exact opposite, and just go like, okay, so what's that about? And started to look at that analytically, started to look at science and how this is the case. It seems to me, at least, with so much, if not all science, that there are multiple views, and you can always, it seems, find opposing ones, really at the opposite side. I always cite, when I speak to people, climate change on this. So some people believe that climate change is man-made, some people believe it's not. I've read very credible stuff, but it's not. I'm not that attached to whether it is or whether it isn't, because, I want to save the planet, and I'm green, I'm very ecological, and it doesn't really matter to me why bad things are happening. We need to stop polluting the planet. The reason I raise the point is that if you look into the other side of the argument, and most people that are on our side of the fence as such, really believe the mainstream story that it's man-made, but there is another side. So the reason I'm bringing this point up is not to talk about climate change, it's just to say that science has got this yin-yang thing going on. And I've come to the absolute open-minded decision on this, that science, in my opinion, is a belief system. That we choose to believe the science that we want to believe, or that we've led down the path to believe. Most of the time, for most people, that is the mainstream science that we are believing. So when we hear of other science, it's poo-pooed by the mainstream, and people sort of have this view that, well, if that science was true, the BBC would be reporting on it, the Guardian would be writing about it, we'd see it on the television. I'm not of that view. I think there are vested interests that promote particular scientific perspectives that keep us going down the same roads, not least in the cancer journey, not least, because the pharmaceutical industry is heavily invested into their protocols, which have not moved on really for 50 years, and in my humble opinion, aren't working. So we asked ourselves the question, if people are claiming, as there are hundreds of thousands of people, that there are alternatives that work, that are natural, that do no harm to either the planet or the individual, maybe it's time that we started speaking about those, and maybe it's time we started looking into those. Because mine and Wendy's perspective was this, that if whatever we engage with on the natural health tip is going to do no harm, then why wouldn't you do it? If by eating certain vegetables or doing certain spiritual activity or relaxation techniques or whatever, exercise, the multitude of different things, homeopathy or acupuncture, all of these, angles, and believe me, if you've not looked into natural health and cancer online, you will be inundated, absolutely inundated, not just with potential solutions, but with people's accounts of how they've worked, and first-hand accounts of how people have cured themselves from cancer, with the simplest things or the most complex things, but the main thing is doing no harm to themselves. So all of the pharmaceuticals that there are in the world, they all have side effects. But natural health doesn't seem to. I'm sure there are some natural health techniques which do. But you know, hypnotherapy or whatever, these things, you know, they're not doing harm. So we looked at it in those eyes. The problem really wasn't finding information, it was filtering information. It was actually filtering it down. So at one point, Wendy ended up on about 80 different supplements each day. Because, you know, oh yeah, well, broccoli's meant to be good, and you know, B17's meant to be good, and this, and it just added and added and added and added, and every now and then we just had to have a clear out and say, look, this is too much, you know, how can Wendy absorb all this? And at certain times when things weren't going so well, Wendy's intensity on doing certain things, you know, we had an oxygen machine, she was running and breathing in oxygen, and it did get too much at times. But so the issue with regards to the natural health journey isn't whether the information is there, it's about how we handle it and not overwhelm ourselves and not become drowned in trying to do too many things. So some time ago I was passed some pretty radical information by a friend who's in the Truth Seeker community. I asked him what his belief systems were, and he gave me this document. The document's irrelevant, but what was very relevant...
Sorry, which community?
The Truth Seeker community. Some would call it the conspiracy theorist community. But so a friend of mine's in that, and I just asked him, what's your take on why we're all here and what's it all about? He gave me this document, and he said something to me which has really stuck with me, and that is, read this. It was out there, right? This stuff was out there. He said, read this and see what resonates with you. You're not necessarily going to believe or want to believe all of this, but some of this might come through. As it happens, quite a lot did, but it was that essence of what resonates with you. What's the truth in this? Because the truth is a very debatable subject in my opinion. I don't know what the truth is. I know what I might believe now, but it could change when I walk out the room. And my memory certainly isn't the truth, I can tell you that, and I don't believe anyone's is, because we just don't remember things properly. I could give lots of evidence about that, being in police interviews when I was a youth justice worker. It's ridiculous how people's memories are different. So my dear friend, when he gave me this document and told me that, and suggested that was the way to do it, that we use that almost as a mantra. So when we were reading information, listening to people talk, it was like, if that resonated on some sort of level to our authentic selves, is how I would put it, we kind of embraced it. We didn't need the evidence. We didn't need to choose this scientific perspective or that, because we felt, you know what, that sounds like the truth right there to us. So we progressed with that. Now, Wendy's journey, initially she was presented, after reading Philip Day's book, she was very much on the side of didn't want radical hysterectomy, which was what she was being proposed. She got straight onto the cancer conveyor belt, and the fear and all of the things which go with that were put onto her really heavy. But act now, you know, you might miss it, and she didn't want the operation. But after consideration, speaking to the other side of the fence as well as the gynaecologist, she made the decision to have the operation. She later on regretted that, but that was a decision that she made. So she had that treatment, and then we made radical lifestyle changes. We cut our drinking down a lot, we stopped all the other party stuff that we were doing, and we changed our diet to be more whole foods, more organic, less sugar. We introduced various supplements for Wendy. And I would say we went, I don't know, maybe 50 to 60% down the natural health road, but we still had the odd glass of wine. We'd still have the odd sweet thing or whatever. Our diet was a lot better. It was good before, but it was a lot better. And Wendy, we engaged in all sorts of spiritual work. Really, if I'm honest, I think we both believed in reincarnation. But because Wendy's life was being challenged, we went seeking spiritual belief systems that fitted with what we wanted to believe, which was that we'd been together before, because we really believed we had, and that we'd be together again. So anything that fitted with that, we were like, we're in. And anything that didn't, we were like, no, all right. And that's kind of how we rolled. And we got into Buddhism and pagan tradition and First Nation American tradition and some Steiner stuff. And it was all really uplifting, comforting stuff. Anyway, basically, 5 years into the journey, Wendy had been for regular checkups with a gynaecologist, and everything was going really well. And we went for the last one, and we were a little bit blasé about it. It was like, yeah, well, this will be the last one, and that's that. And then he dropped the bombshell that the tumour had come back. And we were just like, absolutely mortified. We just couldn't believe it. So it was at that point that well, we realised we had to make some significant changes. What we'd done was not enough. And I think what we'd done was probably way more than enough for a lot of people, way more. Because there's a big puzzle, in my opinion, with regards to cancer or health in general. And it's very difficult, or almost impossible, to know what the pieces to that puzzle are. And there's no one that can really tell you. And one of the frustrations that Wendy had, and I did, was there's no leader. You know, it's kind of, there's no one to go to be mum or dad and go, what do I do? You kind of got to work it out yourselves. And in a way, that's a blessing. In another way, it can be really tiring and really frustrating. Because one thing I would say, and I don't want to start slating the medical profession, because there are some wonderful people that work in that industry, and they try their utmost to help people's lives. But I have got some criticisms, and I hope they're healthy, and I hope when I view them, air them to people, that they can be taken how they're meant, which is I'm trying to be a catalyst to affect positive change in my humble world. I'm not trying to point the finger and tell people what they should or shouldn't do. That includes doctors. One thing I would say about the approach that the medical profession have with health in general, and I would say this is really poignant in cancer, the way that it's been portrayed, the way I would tell it is, if you imagine a sink is overflowing with water, doctors come in and get their mops out and mop the water up. They don't even look at the tap, let alone try to turn the tap off. And the metaphor with that, with health, is they are not interested in cause. Okay, this is the same for pretty much every health, but certainly cancer. There's no training, there's no thought, there's no discussion. They are interested in the symptoms. In cancer, the term oncology, it comes from lump. It comes from some Greek word to do with lump. They're obsessed with the lump. They want rid of the lump. But the lump is just, in my opinion, a symptom of the actual condition. It's actually, in my opinion, a great thing, because it's telling us in a very physical way, something's wrong here, guys. We've got to sort this out. We've got a lump. Yeah, and to some degree, if you can get rid of that lump, great, because that might be the body going, yeah, we're all right now, it's gone. But the lump might stay with you, and the lump might stay with you forever. That's fine. It doesn't necessarily need chopping out, poisoning, radiating. It doesn't necessarily need that. So basically, that sort of premise with regards to how the medical profession approach it, we looked at it, okay, let's try and work out what the cause might be. Let's try and look at what other people are saying causes can be, and let's try and get to the cause. I mean, as it goes, going fast forward, I think stress was the cause of Wendy. I do, and I think that was to do with the relationship she had with her father, and the way that she was brought up with her father. Her father's recently died, so I can speak about that without upsetting him, but that's what I actually think it was. Who knows? I can't say for sure. But that was something that we considered. So we looked at this, and the second time round, we got really intense, and I had an incredible, difficult discussion with somebody. I was ringing up to find some bioflavonoid vitamin C off a company. There's a company called Red 23 who operate out of London. They sell high quality supplements. And I spoke to the guy who owns that, a guy called Graham Weinberg. And myself and Wendy were at a breaking point at this point. We were really, really trying our hardest to upturn every stone and do whatever we possibly could to address this, cancer that had come back. Wendy was at that time on 60 or 80 supplements a day. We were in this ridiculous sort of protocol of really hard work to try and keep her alive. And we were both at breaking point emotionally. And I asked Graham about this vitamin C. He said, "What do you want that crap for?" I didn't want to engage in the conversation. He said, "Look, it's synthetic." He said, "You're asking me to provide you with a synthetic vitamin." He said, "You might as well take a pharmaceutical. The body won't recognise it. If you want vitamin C, take camu berries that are dried and crushed in capsules or salusum. That's how nature intended you to get vitamin C, as the whole plant. Because nature is a wonderful thing, and when it delivers what it needs to, it's not in isolation. The scientists, what they like to do with their funding from pharmaceutical companies is find a healing plant, find out what the active molecules are, get those out, and then synthesise one that's not the same, but enough different so it can be patented, and then sell it back to us. That's their model. It's a brilliant business model. It's worked. It's why I believe 8 out of the top 10 richest companies in the world, pharmaceutical companies, because when you've patented that, you've got, you know, carte blanche to make billions out of it for a very, very long time. When Graham said this to me, I was like, okay, he didn't tell me all that, that's my little offshoot. But when he said this to me, I was like, oh my God, Graham, you know, what you're saying now is going to undo so much of what we've done. And we're at breaking point already, I can't handle it. But like I was trying to say earlier, you know, when you hear a truth from an open heart and you know, your authentic self goes, oh God, that's the truth. Whether you want to hear it or not, I heard it, and I had to take it on board. The conversation went on for a lot longer than that, was a lot more than that. But essentially that was the turning point. That was what sparked off what we then became, and indeed what I believe the story I've got now. So it was so poignant. Basically, at that point, we made radical changes to everything that we were doing. From that point, we never ate sugar again, for example. We stopped drinking. We have only eaten organic whole foods since then. We have not eaten anything processed, nothing out of tin. If it's got ingredients on, we don't eat it. We have been involved with an organisation called the Western Prize Foundation, which Graham recommended to me. Part of that, a subsidiary of that, is a woman called Donna Gates, who got onto her diet. Her diet is an anti-candida diet. It's what I would recommend for anyone faced with any serious health problem. It's very difficult, very challenging, and it's quite confusing to even read the book. When you read the book, it makes sense, but when you're reading it, it's like, what's going on here? We went on this diet, it was life-changing. My eyes changed colour, it was such a heavy detox. It was born actually out of us being totally fed up with trying multiple anti-candida diets. Wendy had been afflicted with candida for probably 12, 13 years and had tried all sorts. You know, the doctors don't recognise candida as a condition. They tell you it's irritable bowel syndrome, which is some sort of catch-all, which in my humble opinion doesn't really mean much. It doesn't tell you what's causing it. It doesn't really, you know, they don't know what they're doing with it. We saw that on the right diet, Wendy wouldn't get bloating, she wouldn't get these symptoms that she was getting. But as soon as that diet stopped, or as soon as we introduced something, it flared back up again. So I basically set out to find, and this was kind of our model anyway, we set out to find the world's leading light on anti-candida diets, and all the paths led down the road to Donna Gates. So I believe that she is the world's leading light on anti-candida diets. I also believe that show me someone with cancer and I'll show you someone with candida. That doesn't mean show me someone with candida and I'll show you someone who's got cancer. Far from it, that's not the case in my opinion. But certainly someone that's got cancer, I would say, bet you've got candida, bet you've had candida issues. They manifest in bloating, fungal toenails and all sorts of other symptoms. So we really felt we needed to get on top of that, and that's why we went on the Donna Gates diet. So it is strict. I made a decision that I would, because going on these restricted diets is very socially isolating, it's very difficult, it's very tough, and it can be emotionally tough, really emotionally tough. So I made the decision to go on it with Wendy, so she at least had one person and we'd do it together. And that brought us closer together, and it was great for me. I became this like super healthy person where I'd been particularly unhealthy before. You know, I used to be 17 stone and a big beer drinker. Now I'm 13 stone, and you know, people tell me I don't look my age, whether I do or not, I don't know. But certainly my eyes change colour and I feel healthy and fit, and it's because of this lifestyle that I've adapted. It's almost like the opposite to the one that I used to have. So basically, the Western Prize Foundation, that's a long story, I'm not going to tell that now, but it's a very, very interesting story, and I would urge anybody that's serious about health to at least look at that, because that's a sustainable lifestyle. The Donna Gates one is one for extreme health conditions. But basically, the Western Prize Foundation, it was based on an American dentist who toured the world in the 1930s looking at people's teeth. He lived with indigenous people in every continent, including Europe at the time. In the High Alps in Switzerland there was people living natural lives, and in the Outer Hebrides in Scotland there was people living natural lives. I'm talking Stone Age type lives, off the land. They were in houses, but they were built themselves. And to cut a long story short, you found that not only were people's teeth perfect without any dental caries worth talking about, pretty much no one got cancer. Okay, when I say no one, maybe 1 in 500 or 1 in 1,000, whereas now we're talking 1 in 3 in Western society. As well as that, no heart disease, worth talking about, no osteoporosis, diabetes or obesity. And these are the 5 biggest killers that we've got. You know, these are major problems in Western society. When myself and Wendy found that out, we honed in on that. And this is where the science thing that I was talking about earlier came into. So we were like, okay, we've got one scientist saying this and one scientist saying that. We don't know which one to believe. But we do believe this story, that if you live a natural life, you don't get cancer. So that's what basically was the driver for me to grow my hair this long. We used to have a skinhead. It was the driver for us to really embrace everything we possibly could that would emulate a natural life within the constraints of living in, you know, modern life. And we left no stone unturned on that. And again, I could spend all night just talking about the things we did, but you know, we've not worn deodorant. We've not, you know, we have a whole house of water filters to take the chlorine out of the water. We had geopathic stress looked at. We don't have anything electrical in the bedroom when we sleep. The list goes on and on and on. Primarily it was about nutrition and diet, but it incorporated loads of other things as well, not least our spiritual practice. So we've been on this journey of trying as much as we can to live the most natural life we can. And that's what I think's kept Wendy going. And we're of the view that we kept Wendy going probably another 6 or 7 years longer than she probably would have if she'd gone down the conventional therapy road. So she refused chemotherapy and radiotherapy when it was offered. On a medical record it said, patient refusing Western medicine. And yeah, it didn't work out for Wendy, so it's not the best ending with regards to the natural health tip. But all I could say with regards to other people is have a look at it, you know, have a look at it and see what resonates with you. And part of what we have done and what I intend to do is offer my help if anybody wants it, free. That's what we do. So another filter that we put on, as well as this science thing, was when you're reading information, I'm sure people have probably done the same thing, and people are trying to sell you something, thinking, is that snake oil? You know, is somebody trying to sell me, you know, whatever it is to make a load of money, or is someone sitting in this chair being interviewed for a film because they're trying to sell me something? Because if they are, I think that money trail is important. I don't think it completely devalues the therapy. I think there's some therapists, natural health therapists, making a small fortune, which are absolutely fantastic. I'll cite one, and that's Dr. Joseph McCullough. He makes a fortune, but I would cite his supplements as top of the pile. You know, he's brilliant, and he's a multi-millionaire with a huge profile. Fair play to him. I haven't got any issue with that. I don't think that. I think he's the real deal. But for me personally, I always put that filter on. You know, if you're trying to teach me or sell me something, it kind of gets a bit confused. If you're trying to give me something because of your open heart, then it kind of, in my humble view, gives that some value. I hope that is some validation for the information that I've got to share of mine and Wendy's story. I'm not saying it proves it's true, I'm not saying it means it works, but at least people can't say, Russell's trying to make a stack of cash out of me, that's why he's being evangelical about all this. Yeah, that's kind of that story.
Thank you so much. I think it'd be nice at this stage just to, we've got maybe just over half an hour, if that's cool.
Yeah.
So let's just hand it over to the floor. Anybody, I mean, a few people mentioned a few questions early on when we did some go-rounds, but at this stage, anybody allowed to ask Russell any question about anything at all?
I'm interested actually about, when did you identify with Wendy that it was the relationship with her father, perhaps, that, you know, was that between you, or was that since she's passed on, or?
It was always an issue. So Wendy it was a very difficult relationship with her father when she was young, very, very difficult, and it caused her a lot of anxiety. And so when we were childhood sweethearts, I was aware of it. He was awful at the time when her mother died. we were both aware of it. It wasn't a daily thing with her, but we were both aware of it. But I tell you, a really poignant moment, and that was when some friends of ours very kindly paid for Wendy to go on some therapy in London, constellation therapy. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but wow, wow. So Wendy had this experience within that therapeutic environment, which I genuinely believed was going to cure her.
Yeah.
And so, Ron, who was Wendy's father, he emotionally abused her. There was stress in the house, and it always went to Wendy's digestive system. She was brought up in this time. He was never violent. He didn't really raise his voice. He would just project this sort of. It was very difficult. Made life difficult for Wendy. And I don't know whether it's I don't see why. I'm just trying to think whether I want to be public about sharing. Perhaps I don't. But what came up was that Ron had done something. He'd broken a family chain. So although he had dished a lot of, emotional problems on Wendy, he'd also not done other things, which came from the field in this constellation work. And we therefore ended up being very grateful for him for breaking a chain of more sinister activity. And it was a way of Wendy being able to reappraise her relationship with her father and feel gratitude rather than disappointment.
So do you feel that she did reconcile?
I genuinely feel that she did, but unfortunately, as the journey went on, things came back up again. And
so complex.
At that time, we were in London. I felt such a relief when this information came out, and Wendy did as well, but it re-emerged. In my solution-focused optimism, I was like, that's it! Wow, we can let ourselves go from that, but it crept back in. And I suppose old habits die hard. And Ron was still alive, and he's still doing his little tricks a bit. That calmed down a lot the older he got. But
yeah, that was going to be my question. Was he alive then?
He was alive then. He died just 2 months after Wendy.
Really?
Most died, yeah.
How bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for answering that.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd be very, very interested in your spiritual beliefs and how you came about to believe what you believe in.
Okay, so myself and Wendy pretty much came from the same place with this. We see all religions as control groups, okay, and we have love and respect for anyone that practices the mainstream religions, absolutely, but we see them as a distortion of our true spiritual selves. We didn't want or need a spiritual leader or a book of rules to express our authentic selves and walk down our own spiritual path. We made it very much our own. So I'm not trying to say this is the way you should do it, far from it. I'm not of that view. I hope that whatever we share encourages people to get into their own canoes, not to follow our path. From a spiritual perspective, our views, as I said earlier, we believe in reincarnation and we believe in former lives, and we think we go around many, many times on a spiritual level, not just on this earth, but on multiple earths and multiple galaxies. We believe the spirit is eternal, not in some in heaven with God and angels way, in some other way. And I couldn't profess to know that, because I think the whole idea of this life is we're not supposed to. It's not like that. Our view is that our true authentic selves is our spiritual selves, that our human form, our mind, which sometimes can work with us, sometimes can work against us, is this sort of positioning with those two parts, and trying to get those working in harmony is maybe our challenge. Pursuing happiness certainly is. So our spiritual beliefs is that. I wouldn't say eternal life, but I would say that certainly more lives to come after this one, that we possibly choose. We've possibly chosen this one, and we've had former ones, and you and I may be connected in the spirit world and be some form of soulmates, and we tonight may have discovered that and seen that in our eyes. I don't know. Myself and Wendy felt that we did. We felt that we'd been around together, not necessarily as as partners, maybe in some other form of friendship or family relationship, but I had a connection which was way more than this realm. And in my life, I find that I find people like that I've just met and think, hold on a minute, this is feeling a bit like I really like you and I've got some connection with you. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen, and when it happens, it's beautiful. We put a spiritual perspective on that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. No, Shirley MacLaine knows lots about that as well. I was very, very interested in her book. I've always been interested in different philosophies, different religions and different things. You know, I'm fascinated by all of it really. But I really used to enjoy reading Shirley MacLaine, how to get from here to there, and she can remember people from other past lives, and just like you said, she said in other lives she was actually her husband's mother, the life that they were living now, and in another life she was actually his mother.
Right.
And she said she keeps meeting these same 6 people twice a bit.
That fits with what we would believe, So the book I would point to people to if they wanted to get an idea would be a book called Journey of the Souls. That's a book that myself and Wendy both read. I've forgotten who it's by, but you'll find it. And I think there's a lot of books like this, but this one we found quite interesting because Wendy was a hypnotherapist, and this guy who wrote this book's a hypnotherapist, and he basically did a lot of work with hundreds of people on past life regression, where he was going into their former lives through hypnosis techniques and healing them from various ailments, and was really successful with it. But then there was one person that walked into his place, and in the process of going from this life to the former life, in their mind, in hypnosis, started to describe the spirit world, the place in between. So he kind of like latched onto it and went, oh, hold on, let me have a look at that through your eyes. Did so, and then made it his life's work to look at that world through everybody's eyes that came into it. So hundreds and hundreds of hours of taking people in a quite prescriptive way into the spirit world and describing it, and pretty much everyone said the same sort of thing. And that was quite, I mean, he could have been making it up, of course, but it fitted with the beliefs that we'd got involved with. I mean, on a personal level, myself and Wendy engaged in multiple interesting activities with various spiritual groups on various spiritual paths. So much so we kind of jokingly called ourselves cult fodder, insofar as, we were like, if it wasn't culty, we were interested. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that was us. We loved it. There were some things which were a bit too culty, I won't mention, I don't want to insult them, but there were a couple which we had to walk away from. But yeah, we really embraced that. And I think, what we did, and what I continue to do, is make it up as we go along. Mm-hmm. Do you know, there are no rules that we need to live by, in my opinion, apart from be cool. And that's it. There's no prescriptive book that in my opinion, that you have to follow. So we and I continue to make it up as we go along. And if we look at our history in this country, the Druids, which were all killed by the Romans, the pagan tradition was all oral, nothing written down. Some might look at this as a real sadness that it's gone and it's lost. Through various activities that me and Wendy have done, we've realised you can really rediscover that really quickly, if you just are mindful and engaged. I don't think we've lost all of our ancestral wisdom. I think it's with us, either in our genes or our spirit or whatever you want to believe, that passes through. Like, animals know what to eat. They don't need to be told by a health visitor. And that innate knowledge, in my opinion, is there. And if you connect with that, with your authentic self, you open your heart, you open your mind, then I believe you can paddle your own canoe in the right way for you as your unique, wonderful self, your unique human being, form.
I think the worst thing that mankind's ever done to itself is losing all the old knowledge when the library at Alexandria was sacked and burned. The knowledge that did it all go up in flames.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my view on that, I know the story you're talking about, but my view on that is the real, cats and dogs and horses and cows, and the animal kingdom doesn't need books to pass its wisdom.
And
Do you know what I mean?
you know how you say about like reincarnation?
Yeah.
Have we been animals before?
I don't know. I mean, that document I was telling you about that my friend gave me that had some radical perspectives.
What was it called?
I don't think I'll share it. It's very radical. I'll share it in private later. But basically, yeah, my perception on that is, yeah, we could have spiritually that could have happened, but personally, I don't believe in evolution, which I know is a radical perspective, and I don't want that to alienate me or isolate anybody within this group or whoever watches this film and think, oh God, we're switching off, there's a nutbag. You know, all I'd say is look into it, delve a bit deeper to what you was taught at school, because we're taught that as if it's a fact, and the arguments are flawed. They're really flawed when you look at it from a scientific perspective.
But in the States, they teach us theologically.
Yeah, in the States, I think are a bit like, you know, the dinosaurs existed at the same time as humans. The 63% of Americans apparently believe dinosaurs existed at the same time as humans.
I spoke to Jehovah's.
Yeah.
I've got several friends that have been brought up in that world. Same world as ours, but just different belief system. And sometimes, because you just talk about whatever you're talking about, occasionally they get really offended because you've said something against what their beliefs are.
Yeah.
And it's like...
But that indoctrination is heavy, isn't it? It's like really heavy.
And we know what science means. It means truth. You know, that's what it means, truth.
Yeah. I didn't know that was the etymology of science, but I think there's only one truth.
Well, I mean, constantly science goes on, and we're constantly discovering new things.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, we've got split a photon apart and done something to it there.
But that's all theory, isn't it?
And the other part of it is actually doing the same thing.
Same thing the other side of the universe. Yeah. I'm very sceptical about science. I always look at the money trail. When I hear these professors from various universities coming onto Radio 4, which is the one bit of media I do engage with, just in the morning to see what's going on. Well, not what's going on, but what the rest of the world think might be going on. I hear these stories and you hear them say, oh yes, we think everybody over 50 should be on a statin. You know, so who's paid you to say that then? You know, you're a professor at a leading university. That's science in my humble opinion. Yeah. And that's what's dumped on us as fact, as truth, as evidence-based. I'm sorry, I don't buy into it.
Whilst we're kind of touching upon the nature of power, and how power can influence things generally, I've got a question for you.
Good.
Cool. Right then, so obviously...
Thank you for your question.
You know, we know each other very well. But I'm really interested in kind of how maybe some of your political views might have evolved. We're living through some very interesting times. You've got some very radical perspectives on history and the ways in which maybe we should organise our societies, or maybe, you know, how we should be acting in the present moment with regard to the opportunities that are available to us. So we just had like a very interesting general election. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about your thoughts on that, how you engage with that, or what you would like to see for the future of this country?
Yeah, so first of all, I believe that the path that I'm on now is to try and be as inclusive with people as possible. It's why I made a decision to recently do an interview with the Daily Mail, which the journalist was lovely, and she's written a really nice article. You know, the Daily Mail to me has always been, what, are you kidding me? Lord Northcliffe that set it up was a fascist, you know, he was one of, but anyway, so I'm trying to be non-partisan in my approach to this. It's so that I get as many Daily Mail readers interested in this story as Guardian readers. So I don't really want to go into party politics. What I would like to talk about, though, is how politics, how I would see things in the natural world. In other words, everything for me, I hope not dogmatically, I hope authentically, comes down to what would we do in nature. If you were to ask me a question, like the science one, we don't have books in nature. You know, people that don't get cancer in nature don't need books. They have oral tradition. and instinct. So in terms of political structures, what do we do in nature? How do we organise when we're in a band of people just wandering around without any land? How do we organise when that grows a little larger? I am not in any way well versed in this, but I have experience, and some of the experience I have through you, Simon, in the way that you've portrayed activities you've been involved with, and others are through friends that I've engaged with who practice deeply, are well versed in First Nation American activity, which incidentally, the reason that sort of pagans and would-be pagans in the UK, I think, attach so much to First Nation Americans is it's the nearest thing we've got, which is to some degree still got its lineage. It's still got its line. It's not from the east. It's not that it's more from the west, and it's kind of I think there's a lot to be learned, and I think we can see the way that those cultures have how they operate. We can maybe take some view that may be how we structured our communities, or at least a little bit like that in Northern and Southern Europe. But basically, my belief on democracy is, I think it's a sham. I don't think it works. I think it's divisive. I'm not interested in it. It doesn't float my boat at all. The way forward, as far as I'm concerned, is by consensus decision making. I've engaged with that. But when I say consensus decision making, what I mean is that people gather in a circle, someone puts a proposal about how they might want things to happen, like I think we should go to the market today and buy all the mangoes, whatever. Any decision that needs to be made for that particular circle, that circle might be 3 or 4 people, it might be 2 people, it might be 2,000 people. It can be on any scale. But basically I believe that humans want to and need to move forward, and they move forward best when they move forward in unison, in unity. When we have these political systems which are divisive, which we are seeing so much evidence of right now, where we literally have countries torn apart, that half want in Europe, half don't, half want Trump, half don't. Whatever it is, these systems are dividing us, they are highlighting the differences between us. And they, another way of looking at this is, if you're involved in a creative process with someone, anyone that's been involved with creative processes, I hope have had this experience, it's not about compromise. Okay? It's about middle ground. It's about what we can agree on. It's not about what we have to put up with to get our own way. It doesn't ever sit right with us. It's about what do we have in common. I say this symbol because that's my view, that's your view, and they're different, but there's going to be some overlap, and it's that ground in the middle there where we can move forward so nicely. The other stuff, just let it go, because we're not going to, there's no point. What, so I'll persuade you to do this that you don't want to do, so you can do this that that I don't want to do, or whatever. You're going to be unhappy about it, even if you have traded it, because you're still not going to be being your authentic self. On a larger circle, in a larger group, it's my heartfelt opinion that we need to make collective decisions that work for us all. Ideally, where everyone in that circle agrees. People are going to disagree, but they need bringing in. So it's up to us to persuade them that this is okay, that, to talk it through and use a talking circle technique where everybody's voice gets heard. So it's not about who's speaking the loudest, it's about passing something symbolic around, and you only speak when that's in your hand. And then it gets passed to the next person. Everybody's voice gets heard. No one gets interrupted. And we don't move forward as a group until we can agree. And everybody within that group has the veto. Everybody. So basically, therefore, no group can ever have anyone within it that is being forced to do something that they don't want to do, like leave Europe or have a clown as a president. It's kind of that's my view, and I am really passionate about that. I can't cite hundreds of natural cultures that live that way. I can potentially cite a few, but it's my true, authentic belief that that's the way forward for humanity.
I think the government, like people, have been at loggerheads because it leaves them free to do whatever they want. We're all arguing amongst ourselves. We haven't got time to be thinking about what they're doing.
Divide and conquer.
Pardon?
Yeah.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah, that's right, and that's exactly what they do. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, my radical beliefs are there's about 10,000 elite that run the show, and the other 7 or 8 billion, or however many of us there are, they need us to be compliant consumers. And whilst we're being compliant consumers, everything's fine. Part of that process is to divide us and rule us. You know, part of that is to turn us against each other, to promote division. Not.
What is coming up now, though, is service. You know, people are wanting to get involved, aren't they? You know, and wouldn't it be a great idea if we did like kind of set up community like on a large scale where instead of sending people to the army, say you've got to do this much time like to the community. You know, something as simple as that. You know, if you're going to conscript people, let them come forward on their own, and then everybody will feel out of place not to do it if they're not doing it.
We've got 15 minutes left.
Okay.
I want to make sure that there's a nice bit of time towards it, at the end maybe, where you get to speak a little bit more about Anthony's point about division. You know, if there's anything additional, any final words, I guess, ultimately, any final things that you'd like us to take away, or websites or Twitters or whatever it might be. But before we do that, I'd just like to make sure that everybody else has one last opportunity to ask any real pressing questions. We've got 15 minutes, so you know, if there's anything else that you'd like to hear Russell elaborate on a little bit, or if there's anything specific about any part of Wendy's protocol that Russell specifically values or would recommend people to look into further, or for example when it came to Wendy's death, which was I would suggest maybe the central aspect of the media story also is about Wendy's death and how Russell and Wendy approached her death. I mean, if there's any questions whatsoever that anybody's got about any part of this entire story, then it would be really a good opportunity to ask them now.
You mentioned cannabis, and I think you kind of started using that quite late on. So was that still kind of looking for a cure? Was it pain relief? What, you know, given that that's kind of what an alternative that people shout loudest about, it seemed way down your list. Is it part of natural health, I guess?
So cannabis. I don't believe that there is a silver bullet for cancer. Okay, I believe that there are lots of different perspectives on what cancer is or isn't. For example, what's the I've forgotten his name, David Icke. He thinks cancer is candida. That's what he thinks. He thinks that virus is a virus and it's candida. And I think I've seen 10 quite credible different perspectives of what cancer is. I have a view of what it is, but whatever it is, I don't believe there will ever be a silver bullet that's produced by a pharmaceutical company or anyone else for that matter. I think it's a holistic way that we have to look. I think the problem, so I think if you, in a simple word, it would be like cancer equals civilization. So undo what we've been led down with civilization, and maybe we can find our healing there. In terms of cannabis, bear in mind I don't think there's a silver bullet, but if there was one plant that I could say has more answers than anything else, it would be cannabis.
Right.
Okay. I believe there are tens of thousands of people, if not more, that have cured themselves. This is my belief. I haven't anything to promote. I'm certainly not selling any cannabis. Have cured themselves by the Rick Simpson protocol, which is a cannabis oil protocol.
Right.
Now, I'm sure that they've embraced other changes, which I would say are essential as well. But if there was a silver bullet, I'd say it was cannabis. That's how highly I think of cannabis. Why did Wendy leave it so late to get on it? The psychotropic effects. She didn't want them.
Right.
Okay? And there are psychotropic effects, and they can be really serious. In fact, when Wendy did get on cannabis, when she did do the Rick Simpson protocol, she had cannabis psychosis, which was the worst experience she's ever had in her life. Lasted for days, waking up in the night screaming. You know, there's a price to pay sometimes with this wonderful plant, and it needs treating with the utmost respect. Wendy did not want the psychotropic effects. When the pain, the anxiety, the sleeplessness, the lack of appetite kicked in for her, she embraced it. And maybe too late, I don't know. But that was the simple answer. It wasn't because we didn't have faith in it.
Would you say a few words about the role of cannabis with pain relief?
Yeah, I would. So Wendy engaged initially with cannabis oil, really to address those things I just said, anxiety, and it solved it overnight.
Is it CBD?
No, I'm talking THC, yeah. I'm talking the full spectrum, I'm talking cannabis oil, not any refined, they'll take a little bit out and make it legal, no, the full business from the plant. So she engaged in it initially because she was really suffering with lack of sleep and stress, anxiety, lack of appetite and so forth. Overnight that resolved those three issues. She slept like a baby, she got munchies, so it sorted her appetite out, and it really chilled her down. And she did that just in a very small dose, so a 0.1 of a gram of cannabis oil, and that was enough. Just taken at night, it really helped her. She did that for a year. This was before the pain kicked in. And then she did the Rick Simpson protocol, which is a heavy-duty thing to engage in. It's 60 grams of high-grade cannabis oil in a 90-day period, and that's a lot for anyone to take. She couldn't manage it orally because of the psychotropic effects. She actually did it as suppositories mainly, and that worked, suppositories with coconut oil. And that worked, so about 0.1 to 0.2 grams orally, and the rest, you know where. And that worked quite well for it. It wasn't a cure. But then, as Simon's just asked me, where cannabis really, really kicked in for Wendy. So the one time we went to the doctor for help was when Wendy's pain kicked in at the end. So she was in absolutely atrocious pain for the last 6 months of her life. It was unbelievable. And she was on the most amount of morphine that, well, I don't think anyone else has been on as much from what we saw. You know, she really was dosed up as much as, and it wasn't doing it. It wasn't killing the pain. The nature of Wendy's cancer and where it was manifesting, it killed some of the internal stuff on the organs, but it didn't kill the surface stuff on the skin. And basically, the cannabis did. So I bought a vapor for her, a really high quality one called, the name escapes me, but she started vaping bud. And it was the psychotropic effects, the cannabis, that didn't kill the pain, but took her mind from the pain. So just like if you were getting stoned, it takes your mind to the celestial or whatever you want to talk about, it took her mind off the pain. I suppose if you had we had a meditation practice, but it wasn't that good. You know, we were helped by yourself, Anthony, with regards to pain and hypnotherapy, and that was helpful to some degree. I mean, I know you did remarkable help with that, but it wasn't enough. No. But the cannabis was. So yes, she still had all the other things which were helping, the morphine, etc. Yeah, I'm sure they played a part, but it was the cannabis which was the saving grace. Wendy's, the last few months of Wendy's life would have been unbearable without cannabis. And of course it still won't acknowledge that, because you know why? It's not evidence-based. The fact that it was working for Wendy is not evidence. The fact that you could go into your doctor and say, well, it's working for me, can I have it on prescription? You know, it's not evidence-based, but it works for me, that's not evidence. You know, that's the system that we live in. There's an interesting story about how you can get cannabis oil on prescription, which may be for another day, but it is available in the UK. We did get it on prescription in Austria under the brand Sativex. It wasn't easy.
It's also not a full spectrum extract. It's
yeah.
If I remember correctly, it's 50% THC, 50% CBD, Sativex. That might have been the early formulation for it.
This is the full deal, and it's extracted by CO2. It's the full deal. But
okay, they must have changed the formulation then.
Yeah.
Any other questions about any aspects of the protocol, or any part of this story at all? From anybody at all?
Can you tell me something more about Candida? Because my older brother, I found like, what are you painting on your toes? Because I was a tea tree. He goes, why? You got like fungal infection or something? He goes, yeah, I've had it years. So now I'm thinking maybe that's...
A fungal toenail.
Because you can cure a fungal toenail,
Yeah, but it's a sign.
You go over the pharmacy over the road and get something for it.
Yeah.
Is it a sign of being body day?
Yeah, so it's kind of like, from a natural health perspective, I would say anything that manifests itself like that on the outside is coming from the inside. And yes, you can suppress the symptom naturally with, say, tea tree or possibly, I don't know, or pharmaceuticals from the outside, but it's your body giving you a message something's not right. Now, in my opinion, a fungal toenail is an indicator, at least, if not a sign, that there are issues with Candida in the body.
And Candida is a virus.
No, what Candida is like a yeast-type substance which exists within a healthy digestive system.
Yeah.
So we've all got Candida within us. This is science talking now. I wouldn't be saying this from the jungle. But anyway, the scientists say that, the alternative ones at least, that's part of a natural digestive system. What happens is with the Western diet, we feed our digestive systems with sugar, we feed them with industrial yeast, and those two, and white flour, etc. And these things feed the Candida a little bit like if you imagine you've got homebrew and you're wanting to make your wine or your beer. You feed it with sugar, you feed it with yeast. The bacteria grow and it becomes exponential, and that's what happens with Candida. When a lot of us can handle the Western diet, a lot of us can thrive, on it, or at least survive, but some of us can't. And the ones of us that can't, this is an indication of something going wrong, in my opinion. So it does your brother get bloating as well?
He's got a pot belly. But
yeah, that pot belly may well.
He's always been wanting to go down the beach now.
And he's not fat anywhere else in his body.
No.
Yeah. See, I have a theory on that, and again, it's only my humble opinion. But that is, why do blokes get this big belly? That's not fat. Because if it's fat, you'd have fat legs, fat face, fat back, fat arms. Yeah. What that is, in my opinion, is...
And it's not squidgy. It's not
no, it's gas. Now, I'm not saying it's one big fart waiting to come out. What I'm saying
it's
is...
full of shit, anyway.
Well, I'm not saying that. No, what my belief is with this pot belly, everything else is slim, is that it's build-up of CO2 from the Candida, from the, sort of over a digestive system that's gone wrong. And like within your digestive system, you've got like diverticuliti and all sorts of pockets. Like your lungs are massive if you actually open them out, all the different pockets. Well, your digestive system is as well. And CO2 and other gases get trapped within that. So you can't press it out, you can't push it out. But that's what, in my opinion, what causes the bloating. If he wants to get rid of that, he's got to knock the beer on it. It is a beer belly, essentially, because of the yeast and the sugar. Yeah. But it's fed by bread and sugar and all the other things. My suggestion would be, get that checked out. There are tests you can do. The one, it's not cheap, but there's a company called Genova, which will test your feces, your blood, your urine, do a remarkable job, give you a full spectrum, and will tell you straight whether you've got Candida issues or not.
Yeah, I have something to that.
Yeah.
So I guess there's one thing that I'd like to say, which is that obviously the fact there's been certain sentiments expressed about the relationship between Candida and cancer, and there is I also believe that there is a very clear relationship between Candida and cancer. It's really maybe important to say that Candida itself is actually more common than I'd like it to be. It's not something necessarily for people to be really, really concerned about, because there's things that can be done, in my opinion, to kind of like, to reduce and to cure and to solve the problems associated with Candida. It's a yeast overgrowth, ultimately around the digestive tract, which is fed by processed food and sugar and that kind of thing. If you weren't in a position to get the test, then there is a checklist, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
The body ecology diet, which is the diet that you and Wendy ultimately engage with. So there's the book, The Body Ecology Diet by Donna Gates, and there's like a candidiasis, interchangeable terms, I believe. Like checklist that you can go through. It tends to affect women more than men, statistically, but that is something that people can have a look at. Yeah. Which brings me on to something which I find a bit awkward talking about because of my involvement.
Can I just before I ask that question, could we just say, so in terms of getting rid of Candida, for some people it can just be like, just knock the sugar out of your tea and everything else is fine. For some it might be just a tiny little tweak. And I'd say ultimately that can be the cancer story as well. Some people just need to tweak a little bit of their lives to get themselves more in balance. Other people, like Wendy, need to do radical reformation. Absolutely start from scratch. And there's just a spectrum that incorporates everything, and certainly I would never profess to know, where any individual lies on that. But I believe by trusting in our intuition and by opening our hearts and our minds and engaging with information that resonates with us, we can find that. It's not a needle in a haystack, it's doable. And your brother, you know, like Simon's saying, you don't need to go for the expensive feces tests. You can just do a bit of reading, a bit of research, and a bit of tweaking, and maybe find out what happens to his fungal toenail if he cuts his beer intake down a bit. Whatever. And it doesn't mean that he's got cancer. It's just an indication he's got candida.
Which brings me really smoothly on to, an experience I had. So my father was diagnosed with cancer about 3 years ago, and he sadly passed away. He took the conventional path. He didn't really engage in any kind of alternatives whatsoever. But as a result of being good friends with Russell and knowing about Wendy's story and Russell's journey with Wendy, I was very grateful for a huge amount of guidance and advice that I immersed myself into personally, regardless of the extent to which my father engaged with it. And it's been massively empowering, hugely empowering, and those ripples have spread and other people have benefited from it. So obviously, you know that I'm going to be eternally grateful for that. At the time, my ex-partner who I was with at the time, we were talking about the body ecology diet, and we was talking about candida. And it was one of these situations where she went through the checklist and she kind of like realised that she's potentially got candida. She'd always had certain skin issues. She'd experienced a lot of thrush and yeast sort of related issues. And then she was talking to her friends about it, and then kind of discovered that actually a significant percentage of her female friends also had candida. So it's a very real thing, and it's something that she managed to cure as well. So she put herself on the body ecology diet, which you don't necessarily have to do. She chose to do that for 3 months, and then now she doesn't experience any of these sort of like yeast-related issues that she'd experienced for pretty much the bulk of her adolescent life. This brings me on to the role of probiotics. So, as a part of the body ecology diet, there's an emphasis on probiotics. I want to share this as well. For the people in the room that know that I'm quite heavily engaged in probiotics, and I've practice probiotics and I sell probiotics and that kind of thing, I do want to say that you have been a massive inspiration behind that. And I want to give you a small opportunity to talk about what your thoughts are about probiotics generally, because just to be completely open, like I live with Russell as a lodger in Russell's house. We've been friends for a long time, and he's been incredibly encouraging about my engagement with probiotics, and that is because of your own belief, I assume, in the relevance of the role of probiotics. I remember chatting to Wendy. She said that something, and you reiterated this, out of the bulk of all of the changes that she made, something like maybe 70% of the most relevant were dietary, or something similar to that, could be 50%. It was a high percentage that she said. The most important things that she changed, she said, were dietary. And then out of the bulk of everything that she made, the changes she made on a nutritional level, one of the most important changes was the introduction of probiotics. So I'm not trying to say this opportunity is a sales pitch. It is what it is, but these are important truths. I engage with these things for a reason, because we share the same passion. But why are you so encouraged about probiotics?
So first of all, let me give you my side of Simon's story. So I've known Simon a long time, and I've got the utmost respect for him, and see him as an absolute shining light of activism within the city. I was involved with him Citizen when he had the Citizen. I offered my boss a suit for him to run it there. I've always supported what he's done. I think he's just absolutely fantastic. I'm a fan, major fan.
He's an inspiration.
Yeah, really, a powerhouse. So when myself and Wendy started travelling, we never planned, but we decided to take lodges just because we were never going to live in the house again. We loved the caravan too much. And Simon approached me about some accommodation, and I said, well, come and live at our house. So I subsidised Simon's rent each month because I basically want to support his activity. It's my way of trying to give something to what massive amount he gives, because he gives so much. And when he moved in, and myself and Wendy would come back, so we'd be sharing the space with him at certain periods. We were never back for too long, but we were back for periods of time. I started to do little bits of work on him, tried to get him encouraged, trying to get that fire which burns in Simon, and that light to shine on some of the things that we felt we discovered that we wanted to share. Simon's entirely right. Myself and Wendy would say that 70% of the success that we had with Wendy's health, extending her life, was probably down to nutrition. Okay, that we don't know, but that's just our instinct, that's what we felt. And 70% of that nutrition, I would say, came from fermented foods. So if there was one thing, apart from the cannabis, if there was one thing I would say for overall health for anyone, particularly if it's cancer or some serious condition, it would be probiotic food. So when Simon came to our house, you know, he's a revolutionary. I took him into our garden and I showed him our 12 or whatever raised beds where we'd been growing biodynamic organic food. It was such a major part, and said to him, dude, this is where I think the revolution is. You know, I don't think any longer it's just taking up guns and overthrowing, you know, that those are my punk days or whatever. That's not where it's at right now. This is where I believe the revolution is. And I could see the clock sticking with him, and then I expanded that into, you know, probiotic food, and just in my way tried to encourage him, not sort of with a sledgehammer, just nice and subtly. And I can't even tell you how happy I am right now that Simon has made this a business and made such a huge success of it, and it's growing, it's got gap support, and it's just, it's one of the best things in my life. Because I see the combination of the firebrand that is Simon Jones and the power that is probiotic food, those two things together, the sum total is way bigger than the parts. And I think it's just going to grow and grow and grow and hopefully soon sustain Simon's life so he can rely on that for income and just really be the catalyst, the toe in the door, the change that will spread and will spread organically. You know, it won't be through the Daily Mail. It won't be, you know, that's my side to Simon's story. I'm not claiming that anything from it. Just that it pleases me so much that I feel I sowed those seeds and they're growing so well within me.
I'm obviously really grateful, really embarrassed. But what is it about probiotics? I don't want to big up practice thing to because I mean I am really passionate about probiotics. Yeah. I'm passionate about people making their own. Yeah. So it's not all about the pound. It's about, you know, get on it, make your own. Yeah. But the more that I'm researching and learning about it, it's pretty much, you know, the gut health is at the absolute root of like all health. Whatever kind of ailment or condition or illness you can point at, I can point at the gut health. Yeah, it's where it starts.
So many people don't just suffer from candida overgrowth; they suffer from leaky gut, and that's literally like holes in the gut where crap goes through into your system. You know, poisons get through, and probiotic food. Basically, I mean, you only need to look at Simon's Facebook or anything to have a complete education on probiotic food. He could probably teach me now, certainly, because he's more experienced than me. I just made my own and read quite a bit about it that resonated with me in the initial stages. But my humble view on probiotic food is one, that way of essentially preserving food is done by all cultures. Okay, there isn't a natural culture that doesn't preserve its food in a way like that. You know, it's soy products in Japan, it's kimchi in Korea. It goes on. The sad thing is that in Europe, you know, the sauerkraut, which is what fermented foods were in the East, they pasteurise that now, which kills all of the bacteria, which is the whole point. So anyway, but all cultures, you know, you get a cabbage, it's going to last for a few days or a few weeks once it's cut down from the plant. You make it into fermented food, it will last for possibly a year. Certainly last year through the winter. I mean, I've got stuff that's, you know, years old actually, it's still edible. 9 months is what I read it's optimum for, but definitely it's a way of preserving food, and this is, I believe, how our ancestors were able to gather or grow food and keep it for periods of time. My opinion is that fermented foods, the process is part digestion. So it's like humans, in my, again, humble opinion, didn't evolve by being farmers or eating plants. They evolved through hunting. That's my opinion. And in terms of digesting plant matter, it's difficult. Some plants are really hard to digest, particularly cabbage type plants, the green type plants, which have lots to offer us. When you ferment it, it's like putting it in someone else's stomach for a while and giving it a bit of a bit of a softening up, so that when we actually introduce it into our systems, it's part of the way down the road. And those bacteria which have been part of that process, you know, in my opinion, are the ultimate probiotics that are alive or happening and are feeding everything to do with our gut. Because essentially when the fermentation process is happening, it's a little bit like a microgut that we then put into our gut, and it just like helps the whole process along. I don't think there is a more healthy food to eat anywhere than homemade fermented foods. I really don't. I have them with every single meal, apart from like a Sunday dinner where there's gravy on, because it would be a bit wrong. Every other meal I have them with, and proportionately it's a quarter or a third of my meal. That's it, and it was the same for Wendy. And we drink the juice, and when it's not done, and it's just a fundamental part of our diet. That's it. I can't say any more. I think they're it. I think if there was anything that I would hope that you take away, if you believe the word has said, if there's anything I would hope you take away from this evening, you probably all recruited years ago from Simon, but it would be that. It would be make your own or buy your Praxis probiotics, because that's the goods right there.
Sort that later. I think just out of respect for people's time, just in case anybody is thinking I need to shoot off at 8 o'clock, I respect that, some of us might have bedtimes to get to or whatever it might be. Is there anything, any sort of like final thoughts, final messages, like if apart from taking away the importance of supporting Praxis probiotics, what else would you suggest is the most important thing that people should leave here with today, when you think about your entire journey, everything that you've learned, everything that you already went through over the last decade?
I don't know if that's Simon, but I'll tell you what I think I would like to just sort of say a few words about, and that is really what we've not spoken about, which is how we treated Wendy's dead body. And that's where the whole media attention came from. It's probably why I'm sat here now, really. And you may or may not have heard or read or seen any of that material. I know earlier on, I think it was you, Ken, did you say that was something that...
Yeah, it was against the mould, wasn't it? It's against it's a bit of not a that word, but it's not the norm nowadays, is it?
No, not at all.
And no, so that's really brave and...
Yeah, so what I'd like to share with you is that out of all of the things that myself and Wendy engaged with, that really was the least radical. It was the least brave and the least challenging for us. And that's what kind of made it a little bit ironic that it's what's gained the attention. Because for us it was like, we planned it for years. And I'm not saying it was nothing, it wasn't nothing, it was Wendy dying, but we didn't feel that we were like way out of the box and doing anything weird, because it was kind of just, if you can, I don't know whether it's even possible to understand how much we've tried to emulate a natural life, because we really have been ridiculous with it. We've always been almost like Howard Hughes and obsessions about it, just trying where possible. And this was just the extension of that. It was keeping Wendy with us was just inevitable. There was no way. We did absolutely everything to protect that as well, by making sure that we had a visit from a doctor that knew her, which is the protocol, at least every 2 weeks, otherwise the coroner could have taken her. There was no way we were having the coroner take her, but by having a doctor come every 2 weeks, we protected ourselves from that, and a whole load of other stuff. But the actual process of having Wendy's dead body in our house was so healing, and continues to be. It's difficult for even me, who loves words and likes talking, and likes the attention of people listening as well. It's really difficult for me to put into words how much that has helped us, and what an incredible experience that was, and how in tune with our authentic natural selves, myself and the whole of our close family, felt by having that process. It may not be achievable for us all. I don't even know if it's going to be achievable for when I die, wherever I am, whoever's there, who knows. It may have just been a one-off in our family, but it's obviously resonated with quite a few people. And, the thing that I would, in the light of the spotlight, which is why I'm in this chair, the thing that I would hope that people can do is just talk about death. Just talk about dying. Just, maybe ask the question, where would you like to die? Who would you like to be with, or what would you like to happen with your body, or have I got a will? Apparently a third of people haven't got a will, because such is our fear of talking about this. courts, you know, the government are funding a thing called Dying Matters, which is strapline is let's talk about it. And I believe because they're trying to save money on the court systems, which gets so snarled up with people arguing about states because there's no wills in place, because people haven't been able to even have that conversation. I tried to bring it up with my mum recently about, she's 87, you know, what sort of funeral do you want? And she gave me about 5 or 10 minutes and then told me I've got to shut up because she couldn't deal with it, you know. And I managed to just grab whether she wanted a cremation and whether it'd be all right in the back of our car or have I got to get a hearse, those sorts of things. It was difficult, you know. That's our culture, that's our society. And I think, you know, the story has captured people's imagination, and I think it's a toe in the door to maybe some more authentic conversations about maybe our health, our lifestyle, our society, our culture. You know, I think if death is the most difficult subject to speak about, which it seems to be for most or some at least, then if we can approach that and we can do that, then maybe we can talk to each other about anything.
Any final questions before we wrap it up?
Have you got a list where you can get all the foods from and everything? Because I remember once when I met you briefly, you told me where to buy the frozen fruit. You said there was a place where you could buy the frozen fruit from that didn't have any pesticides and anything in. I would just be interested in where you bought all your...
So, well, I mean, food-wise, just organic, whole foods is what we eat. I don't really use frozen stuff, but maybe that was for one particular thing. But organic, fresh, whole foods is the way I would say it. And yes, I have a resource list I'm happy to share with you. And anywhere you are in the world, you can get one through the Western Price Foundation. But in terms of sharing information, number one, I'm happy to help anybody that has cancer. I'm happy to help anyone with any health thing, really. I'm going to start calling myself a natural health coach. My services will be for free, and that's it to anyone. I mean, I'll probably have to gatekeep that a bit, but certainly with cancer, and that's as right. In terms of where to get information, I'm in the process of starting a website called thewendycommunity.org. It's called wendycommunity.org. And if you log on to that, it's just a landing page that you can give your email, and you'll then go automatically on a database. So when I do start this rolling, you'll be informed. The idea behind this is that we've got so much information to share. I mean, really tonight, it's just, I know I've gone on and on, maybe it's sick of hearing my voice, but that's just the tip of the iceberg for the information. You know, this is a 10-year journey. And I want to share that information with people who want, you know, to share it with me. And again, not setting myself up as an expert, but just, you know, giving you my opinion on a certain subject matter. Could be fermented foods, could be mercury fillings. This is my opinion. This is our story. This is what we did about this particular issue. There's some links then to other people, you know, other websites and other information that we may have used that you can use to have a look at on mercury fillings. I'll then probably do a film, which might be Facebook Live, in this scenario, where people can ask questions live through the internet, and then there'll be a message board where people can communicate. I might communicate on there, others can communicate themselves. So we have a subject matter like, you know, organic food or mercury fillings or fermented vegetables, and it can grow. And the idea of that is it'll be open source, it's all free information, and I hope that then builds to be a resource for people. And the idea behind it, as I said earlier, if there's one thing I would hope or like to be seen as, it's authentic. It doesn't mean always right by any means, but authentic. Our story really is that. And if there's one thing I would hope I could help to be, that's empowering for people. And the idea of as I said earlier, in being a catalyst so people can get in their own canoes. Because, do you know, one of the, I think this, I don't know what descriptive word I can put on it. I found this so sad, or I felt so compassionate towards people when they were hearing our story about how we had Wendy's dead body in our house. People were saying, and this came up time and time again, we didn't know we could do that. Mm. You know, people are so disempowered that they don't even know that they can keep their loved one in their own home. They think they have to hand it over to an undertaker, or they have to put them in a mortuary. They have to do as they are told when they're not even being told. There's just like an innate thing that that's what everyone does, so that's what we must do. I think that's our society and our life. So the idea of the website is to try and get people thinking a little bit differently, just based on our humble experience and the journey that we've been on. And there will be multiple subjects. Like I've just brought up one, mercury fillings. It's a whole, 2-hour interview with Simon in its own right. It's something people may not have thought of. And when you have a look into it, you might think again. So that's where you could go, me, call me, come round, whatever, but if to the wider public, that's where I would like to direct people. wendycommunity.org.
Okay, I do know about the fillings, by the way.
Good.
To have mine removed.
Good.
You have to go to a proper specialist
Yes.
dentist to
Yeah, and also, do you know how dentists get rid of their... so all the dentists in the UK, are if you ask them, not all, but most, if you ask them if the mercury is toxic, they'll say, no, of course it's not. We won't put it in people's mouths if it was. And then you ask them, how do you dispose of it? And you look at the bins and you look at the trail that they have to go down to get rid of the stuff that is not used or that's taken out of people's mouths. I'm telling you, it's not in the bin and it's not down the sink. It's treated like radioactive waste. Because mercury is the second most poisonous substance on Earth, second only to uranium. And then amalgam, if you know anything about chemistry, is not a compound.
Because it's not stable, is it?
No.
That's the problem.
No.
I'm about to have all of mine out
Brilliant.
next month.
Oh, let's get on that first sounds of it.
Be careful out there, because the removal of them is an issue. It is an issue. And some say the toxic load that your body gets from the removal, if it's not done in a holistic way, can be maybe more than you want to deal with, particularly in one go, or even, it's a balance. I had all mine removed a couple of years ago. Wendy had all those removed from the start. It was the first thing we did. But I had mine done, and it's difficult to find a holistic dentist in the UK. I went to Austria.
I'm going to keto. I'm going to Ecuador to have it done.
Oh, there you go.
My friend's a dentist over there, so I should be getting, direct information.
Nothing like a bit of medical tourism.
Yeah.
I believe it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed it. And
Thank you.
thank you for asking some great questions and making me feel like the story is worth telling.
And one thing finally that I would like to tell people as well is, obviously I've had the privilege of sharing a space with you, living at that house, and I was there, whilst Wendy passed as well. And one thing that I've always found incredibly inspiring and really quite unique, and really unique actually, is just how constantly and permanently positive you have been as a human being. I mean, of course, I'm aware that there's been times when you've been grieving and you've been sad, but in terms of being a person to be around who is uplifting and positive, and you're walking around the house whistling whilst going through the most difficult of times, challenging of times, and the effect that has on the people around you that might need it, it's profound. It's a really, really beautiful thing. So I doff my cap.
Thank you.
All good, man. Right then, thank you very much, everybody. So that's been Thrive. Obviously, Conscious Living and Dying with Russell Davison. We've got a whole action-packed calendar of events. If you'd like to find out more, please check out the derbypeoplesdiary.org. Please feel free to take a flyer. We've got events most days throughout the whole of October that are going to culminate in a significant finale event on October the 29th. Anthony Jackwin, one of the most significant breaders in Derbyshire, is in the house. He's a hypnotherapist, world-renowned, and he's going to be running a session on Wednesday. Would you like to say anything about it or not?
This Wednesday, all about techniques to kind of get rid of chronic pain, emotional pain. If you know any people in pain, send them down here. It's free. There's I think it's about half a dozen spaces left, something like that.
Is that here then?
That's here on Wednesday. At what time?
And it's an incredible...
6 till 8.
It's an incredible technique that Anthony rolls. Incredible.
And if you know anybody that's in pain, this is a technique you can learn yourself to help others with. So it's powerful information.
And it's another one of these things that we were saying earlier about, you know, it's not evidence-based, it works. That's the evidence.
Yes.
You know, it really works.
Yeah.
Word on.
All right.
Well, thank you everybody. Thanks Gav as well.
Nice one.